also in the Shakespeare Centre or in Stratford, do you feel any affinity with presumably the process Shakespeare witnessed all the time when he saw his writing being performed? Had you experienced Shakespeare in a written form before you'd heard it performed, and has that influenced your work at all? Back to TJ Festival.
Okay. We as part of the secondary school syllabus in Botswana, secondary school is a sort of a 5-year period, 5 forms. When you get to about the middle of that, in your 3rd year, you have to do one Shakespeare text. And it's mandatory, so they dictate that this year everybody's doing Macbeth, and then next year Much Ado About Nothing, or whatever it is, Romeo and Juliet. Although I don't think they've ever actually let us do Romeo and Juliet, which was the only one actually that we, the majority of Botswana, we want to do. We're a little bit familiar with it. We've seen it in film. You've kind of heard it, so you're thinking, even if you can't read the entire, you think you have some idea of perhaps what's going on. But with me, other than Romeo and Juliet, I hadn't ever heard or seen Shakespeare being performed. But instinctively, when I read it, it made sense to me that if this was a story, and if this was dialogue or conversation between two people, how could you possibly read it silently? And again, it's because I come from a space where poetry has always been said out loud. I read stories when I'm reading stories to my nephew. I do the different voices. So I don't know if this is just me, if this is just the people I come from, if this is sort of a universal thing. Before publishing came along, this is what people did. They walked around singing their poems or reading their poems, and so I never read poetry quietly. In other words, it doesn't matter whose poem it is. There's a voice. If it's in my head because I think I'll look crazy if I read out loud on the bus, but in my head, but in my head I can hear the voice. I'm saying it out loud in my head, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So it's a big thing for me, sound, and to have that ability that we all take for granted. It's an orchestra for me. Every time I'm walking down a street and I hear a new accent, I hear somebody say a word differently. It's music, and to remove that voluntarily, I haven't quite. That's a process that would need to be taught to me, to work backwards and remove the music from the words, because I don't know how you can separate the music of poetry from the words.
Well, we don't want to do that. Not tonight. No. Kosal, I think I heard you saying that you'll be communicating.
No, it wasn't. Because Shakespeare is so layered. You have to decipher his lines. Does he mean this or does he mean something else? And so it was really interesting in his layerings of all this tragic stuff, and he's very so tragic, and which is it kind of called to me as okay, I get that. I get you, Shakespeare. So in that sense, me reading Shakespeare, and then of course TJ here, you hear Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth and all these other plays that he's written, and then you read it, but then when you hear it and you see it, or if you see it being played out, you get a whole new feel for it, and there's layers upon layers between because now it's he might be saying something, but the emotion behind the words are saying something else. So it's all layered under layers. And to me, in my poetry is it's a lot of ways, almost the same way. It's that. It's I try to put layers upon the words that I'm speaking.
Yeah. Terrific, thank you.